You know that feeling, right? You've just finished pouring your heart out about a tough day, maybe hoping for a bit of comfort, and bam, your friend immediately jumps in with, okay, here's exactly what you should do.
Oh, yeah, or the opposite.
Right. Or maybe you've worked really hard on something, put in all this effort, and instead of just a simple thank you, you just get, okay, cool, but what about this next thing?
Mm-hmm. Total silence.
It's that moment of being totally misunderstood, or maybe worse, feeling completely unappreciated. It can honestly make you feel like you're speaking a completely different language sometimes.
It really can. And it happens to everyone, doesn't it? Whether you're like a teenager figuring out friendships or an adult navigating work and family stuff.
Exactly. So today we're taking a deep dive into this fascinating and, yeah, sometimes pretty frustrating world of how we understand ourselves, our self-awareness, and how we communicate in our relationships.
It's a big topic, but so important.
It really is. Our mission here, to kind of pull back the curtain on those unspoken rules, those common missteps we all make without even realizing it sometimes, and hopefully give you some simple, actionable strategies that can truly transform how you connect with others.
Yeah, practical stuff you can actually use.
We're talking about every important relationship in your life. You know, your partner, a best friend, your family members, maybe even someone you work with. This deep dive is designed to give you a quick, clear path to being truly well-informed on this, packed with, well, some surprising facts and insights you can use starting today.
And we've looked at a lot of different perspectives for this.
We've gathered insights from clinical psychologists, experienced relationship guides, and even some incredibly honest, raw, real-world experiences from online communities. So this isn't just like academic theory.
No, it's grounded in real life.
It's about giving you a holistic, relatable view. Because, let's be honest, getting better at communication isn't just for those serious romantic relationships you see in movies.
Not at all. It touches everything.
It's about navigating your everyday interactions, building stronger bonds with everyone around you, and just genuinely feeling more understood and appreciated in all areas of your life. It's about those aha moments, you know, those insights that make you a more effective and happier communicator, helping you connect deeper with the people who matter most.
It's so true, isn't it? We've all felt that sting of misunderstanding or that quiet frustration when our efforts just seem to vanish into thin air.
Definitely.
What's truly fascinating here is how universal these experiences are. They really connect us all through these shared human challenges. And that brings us right to our first core idea, why healthy communication isn't just, a nice-to-have bonus,
Right.
but the absolute bedrock, the fundamental building block of any strong connection you want to have.
Okay, so let's unpack this for a moment. We throw the word communication around a lot, but why is it so critical?
Right.
What's really at the heart of it beyond just, talking?
Well, at its core, healthy communication is fundamentally about building trust and connection in any relationship you have.
Trust and connection. Okay.
Dr. Shelley Summerfelt, she's a clinical psychologist specializing in relationships. She emphasizes that it fosters an open, honest, and vulnerable relationship.
Vulnerable, that's a key word.
It really is. Think about it like this. To truly be yourself, to share your deepest thoughts, your fears, your hopes, you need to feel completely safe, right?
Absolutely.
And that sense of safety, that feeling that you can truly be seen and heard without being judged, that comes from knowing you can communicate freely and healthily.
So it's about safety first.
Exactly. And while arguments or disagreements, they're a normal part of being close to someone, whether it's a partner, a sibling, a best friend. The key isn't to avoid them altogether. That's probably impossible anyway.
Right, yeah. Good luck with that.
Instead, it's about using those tense moments, those clashes, to actually build a stronger, more intimate bond through the disagreement, rather than letting it drive you apart.
So you're saying conflict can actually be productive?
It absolutely can be. It's perfectly okay to have clashes. Everyone does. But how you navigate those disagreements, how you talk through them and resolve them, that's what ultimately determines if it strengthens or weakens your bond. It's the difference between, say, a speed bump and a total relationship detour.
That makes so much sense. It's not about if you fight, but how you fight or how you communicate through it.
Precisely.
So if healthy communication is the bedrock, what are some of those common communication pitfalls? Those subtle things that maybe we do even with good intentions, but they really start to chip away at a relationship, causing things to crumble slowly over time.
That's a great question. And what's often fascinating, and yes, it's sometimes a little frustrating, is how easily we fall into these patterns that might feel like an easy escape in the moment.
The path of least resistance.
Exactly. But they actually do significant long-term damage. One of the biggest traps, and it often seems harmless, is brushing things under the rug.
The classic avoidance tactic.
Right. Simply avoiding conflicts or ignoring issues doesn't make them disappear. Not at all. It just gives them space and time to build up. Imagine like a tiny crack in a wall that you just keep painting over.
Eventually, it's going to show.
Eventually, that tiny crack becomes a much larger, more entrenched problem, maybe even a structural one, that's far harder to deal with down the road. It might feel satisfying right now to avoid the discomfort of a tough conversation.
Sure. Nobody likes conflict.
Yeah, but for the long-term health of your relationship, it's completely counterproductive. These ignored issues can fester into deep resentments that might just explode without warning later on.
Okay, so avoiding isn't the answer. What else?
Then we have aggressive speech. No, this isn't just about yelling, though that's definitely part of it.
Right, it can be quieter than that.
It can be much more subtle, like consistently raising your voice, constantly blaming or criticizing the other person, or maybe trying to control and dominate every single conversation.
Steamroller approach.
Exactly. It's a clear sign you've slipped into a toxic communication pattern. Instead of working towards a resolution, it just escalates the situation. It makes the other person feel small, unheard, maybe even a little afraid.
Yeah, defensive.
Rather than understood or respected, it's really about making someone feel diminished instead of allowing them to feel heard.
I see that so often. People think that if they just get louder or maybe control the conversation, they'll somehow win the argument.
Yeah, but nobody wins in that scenario.
Seems like it just pushes the other person away and creates deeper problems. What about when people just shut down completely or, disappear in the middle of an argument?
That's another really common one, and it brings us to the silent treatment and walking away, which is also known as stonewalling.
Stonewalling, okay.
A licensed therapist, Jarrell Carballo, points out that people often adopt the silent treatment thinking it's setting boundaries.
I've heard that justification.
Right. But true. Healthy boundaries actually work best when they're communicated clearly and explicitly. If you just shut someone out with silence, they may not realize they've crossed one.
So they're left guessing, which is awful.
Exactly. Instead of protecting the relationship, it actually causes more damage because it leaves the other person confused, guessing, maybe feeling abandoned. It's far more effective to be assertive about what you need or why you're hurt than to assume your partner somehow knows and then punish them with silence.
Use your words, basically.
Basically. And similarly, walking away mid-argument stonewalling means completely disengaging. You're leaving the conflict unresolved. Now, needing a timeout to cool down, that's perfectly understandable. We all get overwhelmed when emotions run high.
For sure. Taking a break can be healthy.
It absolutely can. But it's crucial to explain why you're stepping away. Don't just vanish and leave the other person hanging, wondering what on earth just happened. A simple, look, I'm feeling really heated right now, and I need a few minutes to cool down before we can talk about this constructively. That can make all the difference.
So communicate the need for a break. Don't just disappear.
Exactly. And finally, we often see these really unhelpful habits of bringing up past mistakes.
Ugh. The relationship history lesson during a fight.
Right. And using sarcasm or put-downs, rehashing old errors, or dredging up your partner's mistakes, as our sources call it, is incredibly counterproductive. It doesn't help solve the current issue at all.
No, it just derails things.
It just makes the other person defensive and prevents any real forward movement. It shifts the focus from the problem right now to this long history of grievances, which is rarely helpful for building connection.
As a sarcasm.
As for humor, inappropriate sarcasm or put-downs during arguments are just incredibly damaging. If you do want to use humor to maybe break the ice or ease tension,
tread carefully there.
Very carefully. Make it a harmless joke about yourself or maybe the situation itself, not something negative or cutting about the other person. That's a key distinction that can either build bridges or, frankly, burn them.
Wow. It really is like these seemingly small habits, maybe repeated over time, can dig really deep holes in our relationships, can't they?
Absolutely.
Like you said, they might feel satisfying in the moment, that maybe brief relief of avoiding conflict or getting a little jab in.
Yeah.
But they truly serve no favors in the long run? They just erode trust.
Exactly. They're like tiny drops of water continually wearing away at a stone. They slowly, maybe imperceptibly at first, erode the trust and the connection you're trying so hard to build, making your relationship feel less stable over time.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. And I think a lot of listeners might recognize this dynamic. We often hear those phrases like men are from Mars and women are from Venus. It's a popular idea, maybe even a bit of a cliche. But is there actually any truth to that when it comes to how we talk, especially when we're trying to solve problems or maybe just connect with each other?
It's definitely a catchy phrase, isn't it? And the research into gender differences in communication, well, it can be a bit controversial, as you might imagine. There are lots of nuances.
Sure. Stereotypes are tricky.
Very tricky. However, there's pretty broad agreement among researchers that men and women do tend to use communication differently, especially when they're dealing with problems or stress.
Okay, so there are observable patterns.
There are. Organizational psychologist Julia Banyasco notes that these distinct approaches are pretty well documented, and it's really important to stress it's not about one way being inherently better or worse than the other.
Right. Not about judgment.
Not at all. It's about understanding these common tendencies so we can navigate them more effectively. It's often about how we've been taught or maybe encouraged to communicate based on societal norms or upbringing.
So how do these different approaches actually show up in real life? Can you give us a scenario maybe that illustrates this?
Yeah, let's imagine a common scenario, one many of us have probably experienced in some form. Picture Jamie, who's been having a really tough time with their boss lately.
Okay, the dreaded boss problem.
Exactly. The boss is constantly delegating work at the last minute, is completely unresponsive, never gives feedback, and frankly, never gives Jamie any credit for their hard work. Jamie is totally stressed out, unhappy, and just needs to talk about it.
Makes sense. Needs to vent.
Right. So Jamie decides to call a friend, Alex, who's had similar experiences with horrible bosses in the past. Now, let's say Alex is a man.
Okay, male Alex.
His tendency, generally speaking, based on these observed patterns, is often to use communication as a tool for tangible outcomes, for problem solving.
Right, get things done.
Exactly. So when Jamie explains the problem, the male Alex's natural inclination is often to immediately offer a solution to try and fix it. He might say, well, okay, you could tell him you heard the presentation went well from Susan and ask him why he didn't invite you.
Practical suggestion.
Or, if Jamie mentions the boss isn't picking up the phone, Alex might quickly suggest, okay, why don't you just go into his calendar and schedule a meeting right now to discuss what's going on face to face. His intention is purely helpful. He's trying to solve Jamie's problem with concrete steps.
Okay, so the male Alex jumps right into fix-it mode. Practical, logical steps. Got it. What about the female Alex in that same scenario? How might she respond differently?
Conversely, if Alex is a woman, she often tends to see conversation, again based on general patterns, as a way to build relationships and enhance social connections. It's about the bond.
More about connection than solution initially.
Initially, yes. So when Jamie discusses the problem, the female Alex often seeks to offer empathy and understanding before even thinking about solution mode. She might respond with, oh my gosh, Jamie, I'm so sorry, that sounds absolutely awful, or ugh, I completely understand, it's happened to me as well. What a nightmare, you must be so frustrated right now.
Validation first.
Exactly. She'll likely let Jamie vent for a while, providing that emotional support, that sense of shared experience and connection, before maybe moving to advice-giving mode if she ever gets there. Sometimes the listening is the solution.
Right. For her, the conversation itself is the connection, the act of listening and validating. That's the classic, I just need to vent, please don't try to fix it moment, isn't it?
It really is.
I know I've definitely been on both sides of that dynamic. Feeling unheard or feeling confused why my helpful advice wasn't landing.
We all have, I think.
But beyond just feeling unheard or confused, how do these different styles escalate into actual miscommunication or even conflict in our daily interactions?
This is exactly where the talking past one another often happens, and it can be incredibly frustrating for both people involved.
Yeah, you're both trying, but it's just missing.
Completely missing. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the female Jamie in our scenario is feeling frustrated because the male Alex isn't showing empathy first. She simply needed to feel heard and understood to process her feelings aloud with someone who got it.
She needed the connection before the correction.
You could say that. Meanwhile, the male Alex is genuinely confused about why his helpful, practical suggestions seem to be upsetting Jamie. He's thinking, look, I'm giving you tangible solutions to your problem. Why are you still frustrated? Don't you want things to get better?
I'm trying to help here.
Exactly. Neither person is inherently wrong in their approach. They simply have different immediate communication needs in that specific moment. It's like one person is trying to offer a map, and the other just needs a hug first.
Map versus hug. I like that analogy.
Recognizing these general tendencies, these common patterns, can significantly reduce frustration in your own interactions. It can actually prevent misunderstandings and arguments before they even start, because it helps us pause and tailor our responses. It helps us think, okay, wait, what does this person truly need from me right now? Is it a solution, or is it just a listening ear and some validation? It's not about rigid stereotypes, but about these observed patterns in how men and women often engage when problems arise. Knowing this can help you be a more effective communicator.
So understanding these general patterns is key. It gives you a bit of a roadmap, or maybe tells you when to put the map away and just listen.
Exactly.
Okay, now shifting gears a bit, but related to this, we looked at some really candid discussions from real people, specifically from online forums like a Reddit Ask Men thread.
Yeah, some very honest stuff came up.
We wanted to find out what truly makes men specifically feel unappreciated in their relationships and daily lives. This isn't academic theory. This is raw, relatable, direct experience from people just navigating everyday life.
Absolutely. And these insights, they really highlight common emotional needs that often go unmet. It provides a really raw, relatable perspective for everyone, I think, not just men. It's about truly listening to these direct experiences.
So what came up most often?
Well, a very significant source of feeling unappreciated for men, which might surprise some people, is simply the lack of verbal affirmation and compliments.
Just not hearing good things.
Pretty much. It's not just about grand gestures or big achievements. It's about acknowledging the everyday efforts. Men expressed a real deep desire for compliments, with one person commenting, "No compliments is a big one for me." Others described feeling like just a piece of meat if intimacy felt conditional, or if their physical efforts in that area went totally unacknowledged.
Wow, so feeling valued beyond just the physical or functional.
Precisely. Blissful Ties, one of our sources, specifically emphasizes that men often wish women would acknowledge their active listening abilities more often because they feel they put a lot of effort into truly hearing their partners.
That's interesting. So noticing the effort of listening itself.
Yeah. Simple expressions like, "Thank you for everything you do for me," or "You're such a great listener," or even just, "You made my day better." These can have immense power. These are small words, but they carry heavy weight. They show true appreciation.
It's incredible, isn't it, how much a few well-placed words can do? Just making someone feel seen and valued.
It's huge.
But it's not just about what's said, or maybe not said. It's also about what's done and not recognized, right? The actions.
Precisely. Many men describe feeling deeply unappreciated due to unacknowledged contributions and efforts. This covers a whole range of things, from doing all the heavy lifting, whether that's literal physical labor, or consistent emotional support for others, or significant financial contributions to a shared life.
The provider role or the support role.
Right. Doing all that without receiving thanks, or sometimes even just a simple acknowledgement. Imagine consistently doing something crucial for your family, like working really long hours or handling most of the household chores, maybe taking care of kids overnight, paying all the bills, or driving friends around constantly without ever getting gas money.
Yeah, those invisible tasks.
Exactly. Many men report being taken for granted for these crucial, often exhausting roles. One man vividly described working very early shifts on weekends, 4 a.m. to 1 p.m., still coming home to cook, clean, and care for the kids.
Wow, that's a long day already.
Only to hear his partner say, all you do is sit home and play video games all day, despite him only playing maybe 5 hours a week if he was lucky.
Oh, that's a powerful example. It's easy to dismiss these things, maybe, but imagine consistently providing for your family, staying in a demanding job for their sake, taking on the majority of household labor, and never hearing thank you, or worse, having your efforts completely ignored or misrepresented.
The source material really shows this happens a lot, and it's not just the big sacrifices either.
What else?
No, it's those smaller everyday efforts too. One particularly painful example was a man trying really hard to improve himself, like meticulously keeping the kitchen clean to his partner's exact standard because it was important to her.
Okay, making a real effort.
Only to be met with criticism for something else entirely, without any recognition for the effort he'd already made. He felt like he wasn't getting any kind of thanks and instead getting pointed towards something else I should be improving.
Oh man, that's like moving the goalpost constantly.
Exactly. This constant criticism without any acknowledgement for efforts already made can be incredibly disheartening. It truly chips away at someone's motivation and their self-esteem. It's like being on a treadmill with the finish line always moving just out of reach.
That sounds exhausting. And what about when their emotions, or maybe their genuine attempts to connect, are completely dismissed or ignored?
That leads to a really deep well of frustration and pain, what we call emotional invalidation, and a painful lack of reciprocity.
Invalidation. Tell me more about that.
Many men expressed intense frustration at being told things like, "You're not listening," or "You just don't get it," even when they are genuinely trying hard to repeat back what they heard or grasp the situation, actively trying to understand.
So their effort to understand is dismissed.
Right. It leads to feeling profoundly misunderstood, like their efforts to connect are just bouncing off a wall. Another incredibly common complaint is one-sided support.
Ah, the emotional dumping ground phenomenon.
You got it. Being there for others' problems for hours, weeks, or months, offering a shoulder to cry on, practical advice, just endless patience. But then, when they need someone to talk to, maybe they're going through something tough.
Suddenly everyone's busy.
Their friends or partners vanish, don't have time, or worse, call them too depressing. It's a profound sense of isolation, feeling like a convenience, not an actual friend.
That's harsh. Feeling used.
Very much so. There's also the feeling of being ignored during conversations, maybe even mid-sentence, or messages going unreplied for days, or invitations to hang out simply not being reciprocated. One person lamented, "I can't remember the last time someone texted me first."
Ouch. That feeling of always initiating.
It makes them feel like their genuine attempts to connect and build friendship are simply not valued or important to others. And then there's the deep sting of comparison and disrespect.
What does that look like?
Hearing phrases like, "if you were a real man," or being called pussy or sensitive just for showing emotions, or being compared to other men. A stark comment from one source was, "Nothing breaks a man's heart more than comparison."
Wow, that cuts deep.
It really does. It undermines their identity, their self-worth, their sense of masculinity. It feeds into this overall butler, feeling this sentiment of being used for favors or support without genuine reciprocal interest or effort. It reduces them to a utility rather than an equal partner or friend.
Like a resource, not a relationship.
Exactly. One person described it perfectly. You just feel used when someone does that to you. Usually in situations like this is when you weed out real friends versus fake ones. It's about feeling like you're only valued for what you can do for others, not for who you are.
That's a lot for anyone to carry.
Yeah.
And it sounds like some of these feelings are even reinforced by broader societal messages, maybe, about what it means to be a man.
They absolutely are. Many men discussed how societal pressures and expectations contribute significantly to these feelings of unappreciation and isolation.
How so?
There's a widespread sentiment that everything mainstream nowadays seems to be shitting on men for some toxic trait that most men don't even exhibit.
A feeling of being unfairly stereotyped.
Right. This can lead to a feeling that men as a whole are being unfairly stomped on or painted with this broad negative brush, even if individual men don't exhibit those specific toxic traits. It creates a sense of constant criticism coming from all sides.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
And then there's the longstanding struggle with societal expectations that discourage emotional expression. You know, the whole men don't cry mentality or demand constant strength, toughness, and self-sufficiency. This makes it even harder for them to articulate these deep feelings of being unappreciated or to even seek help when they need it. It's a complex web of internal feelings and external pressures that can be incredibly isolating.
So, if these are the challenges, these deep holes that get dug in relationships and within individuals, how do we actually start communicating better? How do we build those bridges of understanding instead of, reinforcing the walls?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we move forward? This brings us to a crucial next step. How do we actually start communicating better, both for ourselves and with the people we care about? One crucial step, suggested by clinical psychologist Dr. Shelley Sommerfeld, is to process your feelings first.
Before you even talk.
Before you even open your mouth to discuss a sensitive issue. Her advice is to take the time you need to understand your own feelings, to maybe calm yourself down before talking with your partner or friend about something upsetting.
That sounds incredibly simple, but I know from experience it can be so hard when you're in the heat of the moment, right? You just want to react.
It's one of the hardest things to do, but think of it this way. If you go into a conversation very angry, upset, or too emotional, then the communication tends to become too heated and difficult to find resolution.
Right, you can't think straight.
It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. You'll just make things worse.
Yep.
Estes, another expert, recommends a practical tip. Take a mood temperature.
A mood temperature, like on a scale.
Yeah, use a simple scale, maybe 1 to 10, to gauge how you're feeling emotionally. And then let your partner know your mood before diving into a difficult discussion. You could say something like, hey, just so you know, I'm feeling about an 8 on the frustration scale right now, and I really need to talk about what happened earlier.
Ah, so you're signaling your emotional state up front.
Exactly. This simple act allows both of you to enter the conversation with more self-awareness and less emotional reactivity. It sets the stage for a much more productive discussion. It's about pausing to choose your words rather than letting your raw emotions choose them for you.
Okay, that's a great practical tip. Now, for those who tend to jump straight to fixing things, maybe especially men, based on what we discussed earlier, when someone is just trying to express themselves or vent, what's a powerful shift they can make in their approach?
Right. For men in particular, while going straight to solution mode seems logical and genuinely helpful, and let's be clear, it absolutely comes from a good place, wanting to make things better.
Sure, the intention is good.
It can actually be unhelpful when a woman, or really anyone, is simply talking about a problem and primarily needs to feel heard and understood first.
So what's the alternative?
Instead, the focus should shift towards practicing active listening. And this isn't just sitting there quietly waiting for your turn to talk.
Right, it's more involved than that.
Much more involved. It means actively engaging. Try paraphrasing what you've heard them say to check your understanding. Ask clarifying questions to show you're truly interested and want the full picture of their experience. And try relating to how the speaker is feeling, showing empathy.
So reflecting, questioning, empathizing.
Exactly. And here's the really key piece of advice. Hold off on solution mode, unless you are the direct cause of their problem or they explicitly ask you for advice.
What do you think I should do?
Right. Unless you hear that, assume they want to be heard and understood first, not fixed. Once they specifically ask for advice, then the floor is yours to offer ideas. But until then, your primary role is simply to listen and validate their feelings.
Okay, listen first, solve later, if asked.
Yeah.
Got it. And for those on the other side, those who often feel unheard when solutions are offered too quickly, the ones who just need to vent. You said they have power in this interaction too. What can they do to get what they need?
Absolutely. For women who often experience that frustration of receiving unsolicited solutions when they just need to process emotions, it's really about taking a proactive approach.
Okay, how?
First, it can be helpful to stop and consider his intention. Just pause and remind yourself that he's likely trying to help, not to patronize or dismiss you. His programming might just be different in that moment.
Assume good intentions, basically.
It helps. Then explicitly explain what you need in that moment. Instead of getting frustrated or maybe shutting down, you can actually say something like, honey, what I really need right now is simply some space to have a little rant and just be heard. I'm not really looking for solutions just yet, but I really value you listening.
So clearly stating your need for venting space.
Exactly. It clearly communicates your immediate need and gives him a roadmap for how he can best support you right then. And also, it's crucial to add the nuance of understanding his boundaries.
Ah, the two-way street.
Right. While you might find long emotional conversations helpful for processing, he might be tired, stressed, or busy at that moment. And it's important to respect that and maybe find a more appropriate time for those longer discussions. It's a balance of getting your needs met and respecting his capacity to.
That's fair. It sounds like so many of these solutions really revolve around direct, intentional communication, both about your own needs and about what you're hearing from the other person.
They really do. Clear, kind communication.
What about just showing appreciation? It seems so simple, maybe basic, but it's something we often forget in the daily grind, isn't it?
It's incredibly simple and incredibly powerful and often overlooked. What's truly fascinating here is just how much impact simple words can have. Our sources, particularly from Blissful Ties, highlight that words are immensely powerful. They can literally nourish love or slowly starve affection if partners fail to speak each other's language effectively.
Nourish or starve. Wow.
It really emphasizes the vital need to express appreciation and affection consistently, not just on birthdays or anniversaries.
So how do we do that effectively, especially thinking back to those men feeling unappreciated?
Well, for men who often feel unappreciated for their efforts, those concrete expressions of gratitude are vital. Don't just assume they know you appreciate them. Tell them. Actually say, thank you for everything you do for me, not just for the major sacrifices, but for those everyday acts that keep your shared life running smoothly.
Acknowledge the small stuff, too.
Absolutely. Compliment specific skills or qualities you admire, like listening. Remember how men wish that was acknowledged more? Say, "You're such a great listener. I really appreciate how you hear me out." Reinforce admiration and desire. "I respect you so much. You're the most important person in my life. I desire you." These things matter.
They sound like they would matter a lot.
And here's a practical tip from the sources, which might sound a bit mechanical but can be effective. Literally, set reminders on your phone to give regular compliments or praise.
Seriously, a reminder.
Yeah. It sounds funny, but it ensures verbal affirmation becomes a consistent part of the relationship's diet, not just something that happens randomly or after big events. It builds the habit. And crucially, be receptive. Appreciation needs to be mutual.
Right. It can't be one-sided.
You should be actively providing him with the same compassion, trust, and acceptance that you desire from him. It has to flow both ways.
This raises an important question, then. How do we foster a space where everyone feels safe enough to be themselves, to be vulnerable, and offer that mutual support, especially when emotions are high or things are tough?
That's key, isn't it? It truly starts with creating an environment of mutual vulnerability and support. Both partners need to feel safe enough to let their guard down with each other.
Okay, how do we build that safety?
When a man, for example, shows weakness or struggles, it's absolutely crucial to embrace him in that moment, let him know everything will be fine, and perhaps most importantly, do not ever use this against him in future arguments.
Weaponizing vulnerability is relationship poison.
Absolutely. And reciprocate. Open up when you are feeling down or stressed and actively seek his advice or perspective. This can make him feel like your protector, your trusted confidant. There's a concept, James Bauer's theory, known as the hero instinct.
The hero instinct.
Yeah, it suggests that most men like to be the Superman around the people they love. They want to feel needed and capable. So encourage this by asking for his help when needed, not just for big things, but for small, everyday tasks, too. He often wants you to be impressed and fulfilled, to feel like he's there for his loved ones in meaningful ways.
So allowing him to help fulfills a need for him, too.
Often, yes. It's also about supporting each other's interests and understanding without making assumptions. This is huge. For example, if he comes home late from work, instead of jumping to negative conclusions.
Which is so easy to do.
So easy. Instead, don't make assumptions. Instead, calmly tell him you know something must have delayed him, and then gently ask the reason. Psychologist Mert Schicker notes, support keeps your relationship positive while encouraging mutual love, respect, and understanding. It builds that foundation of trust, assuming the best, not the worst.
Assuming positive intent.
Exactly. And finally, sincere apologies are paramount. Apologizing when necessary means being humble and acknowledging your mistakes. It's not about losing an argument. It clearly shows you value his feelings and the relationship more than your pride.
It takes strength to apologize sincerely.
It's a powerful act of humility and respect that can heal wounds almost instantly. And beyond just words, remember practical support, things like helping with household chores, sharing financial decisions equitably, and celebrating each other's successes, whether they're big career milestones or small personal achievements. All of this reinforces the idea that you're a team cheering each other on through life's journey.
This brings us to maybe a deeper layer of complexity in relationships. We've talked a lot about communication styles and appreciation, but sometimes there are unseen internal challenges like male anxiety that can profoundly impact how we truly connect. This goes beyond simple miscommunication, right? This is deeper.
It absolutely does. Anxiety at its root is actually a body's natural response after exposure to any distressing situation. It's a normal human alarm system designed to keep us safe.
Okay, so anxiety itself isn't bad.
Not inherently, but when the period of anxiousness gets prolonged without any apparent reason, that's when it can point towards an anxiety disorder, which is a more significant challenge. And what's critical to understand here and often really overlooked is that anxiety is prevalent in men, but unfortunately their mental condition is not considered and they do not seek help more often than females.
So many men are struggling silently.
A lot of men are silently struggling with this really heavy burden, and it profoundly impacts their ability to form and maintain healthy, close relationships. It's an invisible struggle that often manifests in very visible, sometimes confusing ways.
How does this anxiety actually show up then in their interactions, maybe?
Mhm.
What are the key symptoms or behaviors we might see that are actually rooted in this anxiety, even if they don't look like anxiety on the surface?
That's a great point. The symptoms can be quite varied and often misunderstood. They can seem like something else entirely. One common manifestation is anger outbursts and shouting.
Anger, not fear.
Often anger. Men battling anxiety, instead of showing fear or sadness perhaps, might exhibit more anger outbursts and start shouting at their partner. This can be a sign of internal distress, not necessarily aggression, though it certainly feels aggressive to the person on the receiving end.
Okay, so anger as a mask for anxiety. What else?
Another significant symptom is withdrawal and emotional distance. Males suffering from anxiety might give priority to their isolation as they feel happy as a free bird, meaning they genuinely prefer to be alone sometimes.
Pulling away.
Yes. Due to a deep fear of vulnerability and insecurity, often stemming from past painful experiences, they might drag themselves away emotionally from others to avoid any potential hurt or rejection. This can lead to partners feeling like emotional caretakers instead of equals, which fosters resentment on both sides. They often show an increased response to any signs of rejection or threats, which can cause conflicts and then further withdrawal, creating this vicious cycle.
So they pull away to protect themselves, but it pushes others away.
Exactly. There's also overthinking and self-doubt, a constant internal battle. Men might endlessly overthink about their personality traits, believing they have multiple personality flaws and they cannot make their partner happy, or that they aren't giving their best.
God, sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
Constant negative self-talk.
It's incredibly damaging. This internal narrative can make them feel chronically not good enough. And this then feeds directly into a communication breakdown, where men become unable to effectively communicate with their partners and frequently misinterpret opinions or thoughts, leading to constant misunderstandings.
And does it manifest in other behaviors too?
Yes, sometimes we see controlling behavior, where most of the men who feel frustration or anxiety try to control their partners as a sort of misguided way to reduce their own overwhelming anxiety. Or they might resort to negative coping mechanisms like excessive alcohol or drug use for temporary relief.
Trying to numb the anxiety.
Exactly. But it only provides a short escape before the anxiety comes roaring back, often creating new and bigger problems. And one of the most poignant symptoms, I think, is bottled up emotions. Those societal pressures often tell men, don't cry. They simply retain their all emotions inside them.
The strong, silent type myth.
Right. They bottled up their all feelings, emotions, and thoughts instead of just speaking up, leading to deep dissatisfaction and this terrifying sense, as one source put it, that they're making an explosive material inside them that can burst anytime. It's like a ticking time bomb of unspoken feelings.
Wow. That's a lot of pressure and hidden struggle to carry around.
Right.
So where does this relationship anxiety actually come from? Are there common roots or experiences that tend to lead to these patterns?
This raises that important question. Where do these deep-seated anxieties and struggles often originate? Frequently, they stem directly from past relationships.
Bad experiences carrying forward.
Exactly. Men who have had bad previous experiences remain in continuous fear and stress, constantly believing those previous toxic things can happen again. This creates an extreme fear of vulnerability and deep distrust, making it incredibly difficult for them to form new, positive, stronger bonds. They're constantly on guard, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
That makes sense. What about earlier experiences?
Childhood trauma is also very strongly linked to male anxiety and depression in adult relationships. Victims of abuse or neglect in childhood often have reduced confidence and self-esteem and therefore face difficulty in sharing their thoughts and opinions, and may struggle to feel intimacy as adults. That foundational lack of security from early life deeply impacts their ability to connect in adult relationships. Genuine closeness can feel terrifying.
So early life really sets a template.
It really does. And then there are those powerful societal expectations we touched on. Males encounter more societal pressures, being trained from childhood not to make their feeling and emotions evident. Think of the classic boys don't cry message.
Still so pervasive.
It is. This creates significant barriers of communication with their partners, making it incredibly hard for them to express emotions, thoughts, and requirements openly. It traps these vital feelings inside, fueling anxiety and often loneliness.
This all sounds so deeply rooted in personal history and also broader culture. And I know we've talked about attachment styles before on the show, but how do they fit into this complex picture of male anxiety and its impact on relationships?
Ah, yes. John Bowlby's attachment theory, which emerged back in the 1950s, provides a really crucial framework here. It helps us understand why we behave the way we do in relationships.
How does it work?
It essentially explains how early or initial relationships of infants and young children with their primary caregivers influence adult relationships. Those very first interactions with parents or guardians literally shape the blueprint for how we expect relationships to work later in life. It determines what kind of attachment style we'll likely develop.
Okay, so what are the main styles?
Briefly, there are four main styles, each with distinct impacts on adult relationships. First, secure attachment. This develops from abrupt and positive responses from their caretakers. Basically, caregivers were consistently there, loving, responsive.
The ideal scenario.
Pretty much. This leads to adults who generally have confidence, little insecurity or distrust, and a natural ability to experience better intimacy and feel comfortable in close relationships.
Okay, secure. What's next?
Then there's anxious attachment. This often stems from inconsistent caregiver responses. Sometimes they were present and loving, sometimes not.
Unpredictable.
Right. This leads to adults who often experience fear and anxiety in relationships, constantly seeking reassurance and feeling a deep uncertainty about their partner's love or commitment. They worry a lot about abandonment.
Okay, anxious.
Avoidant attachment. This is often from unresponsive or emotionally distant caregivers. This leads to adults who typically experience reduced emotional closeness, valuing independence maybe above all else, and becoming highly self-sufficient to avoid relying on others and potentially being let down. Closeness feels threatening.
Avoidant. Okay.
Yeah.
And the last one.
Disorganized attachment. This usually comes from frightening, unpredictable, or unclear caregiver behavior, maybe abuse or neglect. This often leads to adults who exhibit contradictory behavior in relationships. They might crave closeness, but also deeply fear it, often acting in confusing or inconsistent ways.
That sounds really difficult to navigate.
It is, but understanding these patterns, these attachment styles, can be incredibly powerful. It helps individuals identify their own deep-seated tendencies and maybe those of their partners. It provides a concrete path for self-awareness and potentially improvement. It gives you a lens to understand why certain behaviors or fears keep showing up in relationships, helping us hopefully break unhelpful cycles.
So if someone recognizes these patterns or symptoms, maybe in themselves or in a loved one, how can they start to manage and ultimately overcome this anxiety? What are the practical steps they can take to build healthier ways of connecting?
This raises another really important question. How can we actively address these deep-seated challenges and work towards healing and better connection? First and foremost, acceptance and self-kindness are absolutely crucial.
Starting with being kind to yourself.
Exactly. Every male needs to understand that getting anxious is normal. It's a natural human emotion, not a flaw. The first step is to accept the challenge. Acknowledge your feelings without judgment and show kindness to yourself. Remind yourself that all the standards set by the society do not apply to each man. You have permission to extract your emotions, to feel what you feel, and to try and enjoy your present relationships without any fear of judgment. It's about being gentle with yourself through the process.
Okay, acceptance first. What else?
Then, self-care. It sounds basic, but it's foundational and incredibly powerful. Focus on your basic needs. Focus on your diet and sleep-wake patterns. Make a schedule of daily workouts or simply get regular physical activity. These seemingly small habits can significantly alleviate the male anxiety symptoms and boost mental strength, helping you regulate your emotions better. It's about building a strong physical and mental base to work from.
The mind-body connection.
Definitely. Next, breaking negative patterns and self-exploration are vital. This means actively identifying and challenging the negative thought patterns and behaviors that might stem from past relationships and could be destroying your current ones. It also means actively exploring and focusing on the positive aspects of your personality, the strength you bring to relationships. Remind yourself of your good qualities.
Focusing on strengths, not just weaknesses.
Exactly. And for partners of anxious men, encouraging them is key. Always try to think positively for your partner, never discourage your partner, and always please them in different ways. Create that safe, non-judgmental space for them to share emotions and thoughts, showing them that vulnerability is welcome and won't be punished.
Being a safe harbor.
Precisely. Finally, and this is really important, for severe anxiety, seeking professional help is not just an option, it's often essential, and it is accessible. Experts not only provide the treatment of anxiety, but also guide the ways to overcome anxiety. Therapies like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR.
EMDR.
A specific technique often used for processing and reducing the intensity of emotions associated with past traumatic experiences are specifically mentioned as being highly effective for trauma-related anxiety. It's about knowing when to reach out for specialized support and remembering that doing so is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Absolutely. So what does all this mean then for building really strong, genuine bonds in our lives?
Yeah.
It seems like all these pieces, from simple everyday conversations to these deeper anxieties, they all kind of tie into one crucial skill that can truly transform relationships. What is that?
It absolutely does. This all brings us really to the power of validation.
Validation. We've touched on it, but let's define it clearly.
Validation, in its simplest terms, just means making others feel understood, seen, and heard. It's pretty much the opposite of making someone feel belittled, insulted, or dismissed.
So acknowledging their reality.
Exactly. It's a foundational skill, a basic element of emotional intelligence, your ability to understand and manage your own emotions, and also social intelligence, which is your ability to truly understand how others are feeling and seeing the world. It's about getting into their shoes, even if just for a moment, and saying, I see you, I hear you.
How does this powerful concept of validation specifically relate to love, to building truly strong, lasting bonds? It sounds like it's more than just, a nice gesture.
Oh, it's so much more. This raises an important question. How does this connect to love itself, to the deepest kind of connection we crave? Validation in romantic relationships acts as a true catalyst for love. It literally ignites and builds it.
How does it do that?
It builds self-esteem and confidence in both partners. Having a partner who understands and validates your feelings can be nothing short of fulfilling. It makes partners feel truly valued, deeply appreciated, and genuinely loved for who they are. When you take steps to make your partner's voice, feelings, and actions valid in their mind, you are showing your partner that you understand and value them and that they can trust you.
So it builds trust and value.
Absolutely. Mutual validation, where both partners consistently make an effort to validate each other, is truly a core feature of any truly loving and healthy relationship. When this happens regularly, genuine, unconditional love can truly permeate the relationship, filling every corner of your shared life. It's like the air that love breathes. Without it, love suffocates.
That makes perfect sense. It's about creating that atmosphere where love can actually thrive. But what happens when validation is missing? What does that look like in daily interactions? What's the opposite of this healthy exchange?
Right. When validation is missing, you often get what's called mutual invalidation. These are relationships markedly devoid of validation, where partners regularly dismiss, ignore, or maybe belittle each other's thoughts, feelings, or actions. This is light years away from what you might find in a truly loving interaction. It's a cold, hard place for a relationship to be.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Think about a really common example. The everyday dirty dishes bickering that so many couples experience.
Ah, yes, the classic.
Right. One partner might say with clear frustration, "Ugh, I really can't stand when you leave the dirty dishes in the sink like this. That is just disgusting. Why do you do that?"
Okay, starting with criticism.
Exactly. Now, instead of validating that frustration, even if they don't agree, the other partner immediately responds defensively and invalidatingly. "Well, you seem to have no idea how much work I had to do shuttling the kids around town for all their after-school activities today. How do you not see that?"
Deflection and counterattack.
Precisely. And then it escalates. "You don't seem to appreciate how much work I have this time of year. You never seem to care about my work at all." And the cutting response comes back. "Well, you clearly don't care about my work in the slightest. And by the way, I can't stand how you fold the kitchen towels. Can't you just fold them neatly? Is that too much to ask?"
Wow, it just spirals completely away from the dishes.
Completely. In this exchange, each partner is criticizing, getting defensive, and completely invalidating the other's feelings and experience. Instead of moving towards any kind of mutual understanding, they're just creating bitterness, resentment, and self-doubt. It's a stark contrast to a loving, supportive interaction, and it slowly poisons the connection. They're not listening to understand. They're listening only to respond and defend their own position.
That's a really clear and sadly relatable example of invalidation. So what's a practical challenge then? If you want to improve your relationships and consciously foster more validation, how can you actually start practicing this crucial skill like today?
Okay, here's a powerful little activity you can try to bring this concept into your daily life. First, maybe have an open conversation with your partner or even a close friend or family member you interact with a lot about the importance of validation. Talk about its connection to relationship harmony. Just try to get on the same page about how vital it feels to both of you.
Okay, talk about it first.
Then, the practical part. Make some kind of record of your own validating and invalidating acts within your interactions throughout the day, or maybe over a week. This can be super simple, like just making mental notes in your head, or maybe jotting them down quickly on your phone or a piece of paper. You could also try this in a few different contexts, maybe at work or with different family members, to see if some situations naturally lead to more validating acts than others.
So just becoming aware of your own pattern.
Exactly. The insight this provides is incredibly telling. If your validating acts clearly outweigh your invalidating ones, that's a very positive sign. You're likely building strong connections. But if the inverse is true, if invalidating acts are happening more frequently, it signals a problem area that probably needs some attention.
And the solution.
The straightforward solution that comes from this exercise is to then consciously work to replace invalidating acts with validating acts. Given the absolutely central role that validation plays in fostering trust, understanding, and love, this simple shift, this intentional choice to focus on making others feel seen and heard, can truly be at the core of relationship growth. It helps you become much more aware of your own communication patterns and intentionally pivot towards a more understanding and appreciative way of interacting in all your relationships.
Wow. We've covered a lot today, haven't we? From those simple daily communication struggles to the much deeper anxieties that can really impact our connections. We've looked at the foundational importance of healthy communication, understanding those different styles men and women often employ, recognizing the hidden struggles and unappreciated feelings men, in particular, often experience, and ultimately the transformative power of genuine validation and self-awareness in all our connections.
It's a lot to think about, but it all connects.
It really does. So what does this all mean for you listening right now today? Maybe consider this. If our relationships are truly built on understanding, then every moment of potential miscommunication isn't necessarily a failure to be avoided. But maybe it's an invitation to listen differently, perhaps, to speak more clearly, and to truly see the person in front of you with all their unique needs, their unspoken burdens, and their incredible experiences. What small shift in your own communication, or even just your own self-awareness, could open up a whole new level of connection for you starting today?